The Chicago lakefront is incredible.
But there's one thing that's really holding it back: Lakeshore Drive.
It's loud, it gets clogged with traffic every day, and it cuts off the residents of Chicago from this beautiful lakeshore. Almost 70,000 bus riders use Lakeshore Drive every day too, and 60% of people who do drive here say they'd actually prefer to take the bus if it was more frequent and reliable. So what can be done about this? Chicago needs to seriously redefine how it uses its lakefront. And that redefinition can lead to something that's way more beautiful and better for everyone who ever finds themselves along the lake in Chicago. Let's take a deep dive into the drive and look at what the state and city are actually planning to do to rebuild this iconic road, and let's talk about what we should maybe do instead of that.
I'm heading out to meet my friend Alex right now. He's just really good at articulating the vision for what Lakeshore Drive could be. Consider liking and subscribing so this video gets to more people, maybe even to somebody that works at IDOT. Also, if you feel like it, please support me on Patreon. It helps me make the videos better, and you also get some benefits. You get videos a week early, among some other things, so definitely helps. All right, let's get back to it.
Hey, my name is Alex Montero. I'm a lead with Strongtown Chicago. And I live less than half a block from Lakeshore Drive. In my opinion, the lakefront is without a question the best natural amenity that the city has. There's dog parks, there's tennis courts, there's little sculpture gardens, there are plenty of places where people jump in to swim, there's many beaches. I think the lake is part of what makes Chicago a distinct city naturally, and it's not any surprise that on any map of Chicago, people instantly know where you're talking about as soon as they can see the outline of the lake next to it.
It's been officially set aside for the people of Chicago ever since 1909 with Daniel Burnham's Plan of Chicago. After all, it was Burnham who said, "The lakefront by right belongs to the people. Not a foot of its shore should be appropriated to the exclusion of the people." Chicago retail mogul Aaron Montgomery Ward further solidified that right in a lengthy 1911 legal battle that ended with the Illinois Supreme Court declaring that the lakefront would be, quote, "forever open, clear, and free of buildings." And ever since then, the lakefront has been the city's best natural asset, its front yard. Open and clear of all buildings except one. The city has just over 30 miles or 48 kilometers of lakefront, and a remarkable 91% of that is public park space. Property along the lake is some of the most sought after in the entire Midwest. But we also can't leave out the fact that it's a major transportation artery. The northern part of the drive sees 155,000 vehicles and 69,000 CTA bus riders every day. That's about half as many vehicles as the Kennedy Expressway gets between downtown and O'Hare in a day. If we consider that at rush hour, each car statistically is carrying 1.1 people, so just about 171,000 people total, then 28% of all people moving on North Lakeshore Drive are riding on a CTA bus. That's a lot. And it makes sense. The lakefront from north to south is some of the most densely populated land in the city, and the L lines don't really do much for a lot of those people. That's why at rush hour you've got 7 Lakeshore Express bus routes funneling people up north and 5 more heading south. And even though those buses move nearly 30% of the total traffic on the north section, and they do it more efficiently, you wouldn't know that by looking at the road. It's all primarily dedicated to the other 70% of road users who drive, probably alone, in a vehicle that takes up a lot more room per person. During rush hour in a big city like Chicago, a lot of people are trying to get somewhere, so the ability to move is at a premium. There's only so much space to move a lot of people, and the more people who choose to share space on larger vehicles, the better the situation is for everybody. But yet, Lakeshore Drive is set up so even the people who choose to move more efficiently get subjected to the same traffic jams that are caused by people who, for one reason or another, chose a mode of transport that caused the traffic jam. And Lakeshore Drive does get pretty backed up. It's not the worst traffic in the city, but it's definitely there, and it's really concentrated near and north of downtown. And Lakeshore Drive is the only expressway in Chicagoland where you have at least a dozen express buses using the road as well, so that traffic is affecting everybody. And the road is old. The drive we know today really started taking shape in the 1930s and was really solidified by the 50s. It's got that early American expressway vibe, with narrow lanes and curves that sometimes feel just a little too sharp to be taken at 70 miles per hour. But that doesn't stop Chicagoans. Some of the bridges date back to the FDR era and are really starting to show their age. So it probably won't be a surprise that the Illinois Department of Transportation is looking to revamp the northern part of the drive. The project study for this once-in-a-generation opportunity kicked off in 2013 as a star-studded joint effort between IDOT, the Chicago DOT, the Federal Highway Administration, the Chicago Park District, and the CTA on board, as well as a major advisor and stakeholder. It focused on the 7-mile or 11-kilometer section of the drive between Grand and Hollywood Avenues. The goal of this study, dubbed Redefine the Drive, is to improve safety for all users, improve mobility for all users, address infrastructure deficiencies, and improve access and circulation. And also in 2013, man, big year for transportation in Chicago, CDOT updated its own Complete Streets policy to prioritize road users in this order: pedestrians, public transit, bicycles, and private vehicles. This goes back to the fact that it's in the city's best interest to try and give priority to modes of travel that demand less from the city's budget. If more people walk, ride transit, and bike, the city has less wear and tear on its roads, and over time, investments in roads can be a lot smaller. So as the Redefine the Drive effort progressed, 16 different concepts were considered. Some of my favorites, for different reasons, were dedicated transitway off alignment, light rail transit, and submerged express tunnel in lake. A few of these were nixed in the first round of consideration, and after the second round of screening, they decided on the main options, which they gave fun little names. Of these, I think the exchange would have been the most preferred, and later on I'll talk about why. This one would have set aside the far left lane for buses only, with 3 general traffic lanes. But unfortunately, that's not the one that would win out. The Essential was the winner, and that one basically maintains 3 or 4 lanes of general traffic and gives buses a dedicated lane at on and off ramps of the drive. The study claims that this will shave off 6.5 minutes or a full 25% off travel times for bus riders at rush hour. That seems pretty generous. The on and off ramps are a very minuscule part of an express bus's route, and often the ramps are kinda congested, but not 6 or 7 minutes worth of congestion. Most of the delays for everyone happens on the drive itself, especially leading up to the Oak Street curve, which Redefine the Drive would straighten out.
Redefine the Drive was originally presented as a way of rethinking the function that Lakeshore Drive does on the north side. Very quickly, any options that weren't just a widening of the existing roadway were thrown out, which is really frustrating because I think the feedback that people have given on Lakeshore Drive for years is that it shouldn't function like a highway. And it's frustrating that Redefine the Drive and the preferred alternative that IDOT and CDOT have selected does everything it can to make it easier for cars to move at faster speeds. Officially, the speed limit here is 40 miles per hour. The only people doing 40 here are the people taking the exit ramp.
So knowing the goals of this study and CDOT's supposed prioritization of road users, how do we end up getting a redesign of North Lakeshore Drive that essentially is just the status quo? Jim Merrill, a spokesperson for Chicago Active Transportation Alliance, said it best in a quote for a January 2025 Streets Blog Chicago article. The purpose and need of the project basically says we need to make the roadway better for everyone, including people driving by themselves in a car. This shapes the problem the engineers were given to solve. Anything that slows down private cars was dinged in their analysis. The busiest stretches of Chicago's Lakefront Trail can see up to 25,000 people a day on a day with nice weather. On days like that, it's easy to think to yourself, man, Chicago is not a real place. Why doesn't everyone want to live here? But have you ever been to the part of the lakefront north of where Lakeshore Drive ends, or around Montrose Beach where the expressway is a good 3/4 of a mile from the shore? You notice how quiet it is. Just listen to the difference between Montrose and North Avenue Lakefront.
Waterfronts are some of the most valuable areas to a city, and I don't just mean that in terms of the real estate prices, although that's also true. Unfortunately, waterfronts also have a strategic advantage for transportation engineers, which is that since there are no roads or streets in the water, it's really easy to put something like a highway right next to it.
There are many points on the Lakefront Trail where you're right up against the traffic. It's loud, you're breathing in all sorts of fumes and microplastics, and it's potentially dangerous too. It just gets me that we have such an amazing park and beautiful lakefront, but when you zoom out and look at it from above, we decided to cut right through it. And even if you love driving on Lakeshore Drive, just try and put aside any bias for a second and ask yourself if any of this looks normal or natural. It really is a barrier to getting to the lake. There are only 24 crossings of Lakeshore Drive that are specifically for people walking or biking. That comes out to about one crossing every 2/3 of a mile. A lot of these are loud, exposed overpasses or drab, dark underpasses with unidentifiable smells. And some of them, especially on the South Lakefront, are really far apart from each other. You might live pretty close geographically to the lake, but if you have to walk a bunch just to get to the nearest crossing of the drive, you're not actually all that close. This brings me to kind of the genesis for making this video. Chicago has a great transit system and is trying to beef up its bike infrastructure, and it's already one of the most walkable cities in the country. But at the same time, the city tries to accommodate as many private vehicle drivers as possible. These two things can't coexist peacefully. They're at odds with each other.
I think that in any major city there are going to be cars on the road. That happens everywhere, even cities that have really good walkability, bikeability, and transit. The problem is that prioritizing cars and private vehicles has really severe consequences for how livable the city is. If you just prioritize getting cars into and out of popular areas and cities, you very quickly end up with massive oversized roads, really huge parking lots, and not much of the neighborhoods and the places that people want to go there for in the first place.
You can either be a full-on car city where everybody drives, or you can be a city that's mostly made up of non-drivers, but it's hard to be good at both. And I guess it's kind of hard to be good at being a full-on driving city because traffic will never not be a thing in that scenario.
The lakefront really captures that in a nutshell. We plop down a huge expressway on the lakefront that promises speed for vehicle drivers, but we also try to make the lakefront a great space for people. And while it still is great, it could be so much better with less cars.
But we need an expressway on Lakeshore Drive. How else are people going to get around the city?
It's hard to imagine there not being an expressway on the lakefront, but let's try it for a second. Light rail on the lakefront might be a pipe dream, but just let this soak in. It's quieter. Crossings can be more often because the speed of the traffic isn't the #1 priority. It's beautiful. It's a roadway where more people move in a more efficient way, and it just fits with the scale of the park. Whether you drive, ride the light rail, bike, or walk, you're part of the park. You're not making the park worse by choosing to move through it. The interesting thing is that the majority of people don't want to drive on Lakeshore Drive. According to an IDOT survey in the beginning stages of the Redefine the Drive effort, 60% of people who regularly drive on North Lakeshore Drive would prefer to take transit if buses came more often and were more reliable. 60% of 170.5K people is around 102,000 people. That's about 50% more than the amount of people who ride the bus on Lakeshore Drive now. Right now, there are a few reasons why people drive on Lakeshore Drive, and the first one is simply because it's there. If we provide a huge, wide road in a beautiful location for people to drive on, and on the flip side, we don't give any priority or reason for people to choose transit, a lot of people will choose to drive. Some people don't like the idea of getting onto a crowded bus where they'll just sit in the same traffic they would if they drove their own car, and then they'll have to transfer to another bus or walk home at the end of that trip. People need a real reason to take it, and for it to win out over driving, transit really has to have a real time advantage. And to me, it's just common sense. Give priority to the mode of transport where people use less energy, choose to use space efficiently by being in close proximity to others, cause less wear and tear on city streets, and require less expensive to maintain parking at both ends of their trip. Those 60% of people who would prefer to take transit but aren't taking it right now need a good reason to do so. And how about those other 40%? I would assume that a lot of these people are drivers who are using Lakeshore Drive to travel a bit further. The northern terminus of Lakeshore Drive sees nearly 40,000 vehicles per day, and the neighborhood the drive dumps into, Edgewater, has not many more total residents than that, and about 40% of those households don't have a single car. This seems to indicate that people are using Lakeshore Drive for cross-city trips that aren't super convenient on transit, like say from Pilsen to Lakeview, Hinsdale to Loyola, or UChicago to Skokie. For this, it helps if the Lakeshore Drive leg of their transit trip would have dedicated bus lanes, but we also need good cross-city and cross-regional transit connections. For this, there are a lot of good ideas out there, like Starline Chicago's Crosstowners plan, which would make it a lot more feasible for people to travel from the suburbs to neighborhoods that are just past downtown Chicago. And if we do these things, if we get more people riding on transit instead of taking Lakeshore Drive, the drive can naturally be made more narrow. It no longer has to be 3 or 4 lanes wide in each direction if more people are traveling on it in a more space-efficient way. Better Streets Chicago did some great analysis on this. They assumed that robust transit investment could mean you're able to take 1 lane off of Lakeshore Drive in each direction. Pair that with narrowing the remaining lanes to 10 feet, creating a more slower boulevard feel, truer to the original form of Lakeshore Drive, and you gain a total of anywhere between 10 and 25 acres of reclaimed parkland from the old expressway area. And all that existing acreage of park will be a whole lot more usable because it'll be less loud and less polluted. If you went a step further and really committed on the boulevard concept, you could remove the expressway interchanges and reclaim another 40 or 45 acres of parkland. Then take it another step further and cut the Lakeshore Boulevard back to Foster, reclaiming another 22 acres of parkland. That's up to 92 acres of reclaimed park space, which is more than Redefine the Drive would add through its planned land reclamation around the Oak Street curve, which is mostly just so they can straighten out the road and make it higher speed. If IDOT and CDOT really wanted to prioritize pedestrians and transit riders in their redesign of Lakeshore Drive, a narrower boulevard and transitway really is the way to go. It's quiet, it's beautiful, it's more efficient, and not to mention it's much, much safer than the status quo for everybody. Their current plan, which hasn't seen much movement since they chose the preferred alternative last August, really is just a regurgitation of the status quo.
The planners and traffic engineers really got beholden to the traffic modeling that told them they have to move as many cars through here as possible. It all goes back to this. What kind of city do we want to be?
World-class cities just don't have wide expressways dividing the city from their best waterfronts and natural areas. And this is something that was summed up really well by acting CTA President Nora Learson in regards to Chicago Transit. We can become a system that is not used by many, or we can become a world-class, huge system that people flock to in large numbers. If we really want to do that, we can't be afraid of taking 1 lane away from cars so buses get more priority, and that goes for Lakeshore Drive and many other streets across Chicago.
Whatever the rebuild of Lakeshore Drive is going to be, is the way it's going to be for decades. This isn't just a routine maintenance project where if CDOT and IDOT get it wrong, it's okay, we can fix it later. Whatever the redesign ends up looking like is how most people alive in Chicago now will experience Lakeshore Drive for the rest of their lives. And so it's really worth getting right. CDOT and IDOT did this already on the south side 3 decades ago. And the safety standards and the comparative lack of use in those parks on the lakefront compared to the north side speaks for itself.
As we've talked about here today, it's in the city's best interest and in the interest of common sense to try to give transit more priority. Our lakefront is trying to be good for drivers and good for people who aren't driving, and it's not doing either of those things as well as it could. We need to choose which one of those things we want to encourage, and the choice seems obvious. Make it easier for those 60% of people to choose transit over driving.
There's a lot of groups in Chicago that are concerned about this, and Strongtown Chicago is one of them. One of our priorities is safe streets. We really want to make sure that CDOT and IDOT make whatever project Redefine the Drive is going to be something that's not going to be even more hostile to the folks who live in the neighborhoods along the lakefront than it already is. We're pushing the city to really make choices that are going to benefit its neighborhoods and its residents in the long term. And if you're interested in helping out in that and you live in Chicago, check out Strongtown Chicago, strongtownchicago.org to see how you can get involved.